There are secrets out there, guys, performance marketing secrets, and knowing just one or two of them can light up your funnels. Let's go. This is Performance Marketing Insiders. I'm Chris Mechanic. Join me as we go deep into the secrets of the world's elite marketing minds. Performance Marketing Insiders is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI-driven performance agency that makes you smarter. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Performance Marketing Insiders. I am really excited to dive in with today's guest. She is Chief Marketing Officer at Wrike, which is one of the most powerful work management tools on the market. And having held roles in demand gen, customer and lifecycle marketing, and marketing ops at companies like Conga, Conversant, and Return Path, she knows a thing or two about how to rally customers around a brand. And in fact, she recently won the Most Outstanding Woman in Business Awards from the Denver Business Journal, which is not an easy award to win. But aside from working up the marketing ranks at a fairly young age, she's got an amazing personal story that is inspiring thousands of up-and-coming marketing leaders. And she's just an amazing person in general. So I'm really excited to be diving in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Esther Flammer, CMO of Wrike.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Happy to chat with you on this beautiful Friday morning.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too. I'm honored to be here with you. I was doing a little bit of research. I saw you had this awesome interview from Salesforce's CMO Club recently. So I learned all about your whole backstory, and I'm interested to get into that. I'm interested to talk about Wrike. But you know, the audience here, we love basically those 80-20 secrets. So you must have a lot of secrets, with your background and just like your career trajectory. What do you attribute? What is one of your biggest secrets to marketing success?
Yeah, it's a great question. As I think about how I've built my career and how I've helped a lot of high growth companies accelerate really quickly. As I think about some of the reasons why I'm in marketing and why I love what I do, for me, kind of the secret is really around making sure that you're creating that space for marketing to really activate as a strategic driver for an organization. I talk about this a lot because I'm really passionate about it. And again, this is why I think, I'm in marketing, why I think marketing can be really that driver for success for any organization, at any company, any industry, any size. Because to me, marketing is not just a support function. And oftentimes you do see that where, they're a supporter of sales. They help drive leads and pipeline and get revenue out the door. They, help with sales tools and field events and making things look nice, from a brand standpoint. But in my mind, it goes so much further than that. And I think, if you really want to position yourself in an organization as well as your function and your department and specifically the marketing team in an organization, it has to center around the organizational strategy. It is really flipping things on its head because oftentimes what you see when you go into an organization is it's sales asking for things, it's product handing you the roadmap and saying, here, go and launch this to market. It is the CEO saying, hey, we want to go after a certain vertical. Let's start to go after, healthcare. That's the organizational strategy, so go and do. For me, it is flipping it on its head where marketing should be at the pulse, our fingers should be on the pulse of what is actually happening in the market, what is actually shaping the market. How can we as a company and us as a solution position ourselves to be those innovation drivers and to start to capture that market in a way where no one else can? And so for me, it is ensuring that you are really understanding of market trends, really understanding of competitive, trends and what are the competitors doing? Where is the industry headed? What are some of the things that we can really capitalize on in terms of overall, even macroeconomic environment or different changes in buyer behavior, as well as, all of the trends around new tech and AI and all of those components. And then how do you actually bring that into a strategy where you can differentiate yourself as an organization in a really saturated space
Yeah.
where you can really start to analyze the market and figure out what are our key markets that we should go after, and then actually mobilize a strategy across the entire organization to go and dominate that market.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's working with every single department across an organization. So
Yeah.
it's sorry, super long-winded, but that's kind of the secret that I like to really tell people. So it's not so much of a secret.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's incredibly powerful. The idea of flipping anything on its head a lot of times can be powerful, but especially as marketers, we are regularly handed the strategy. Like it's always or almost always like, hey, healthcare is our vertical. Marketing team, go after healthcare. So I think a lot of the listeners right now are in a position where the strategy is being dictated behind closed doors, being developed behind closed doors, and they're like given these targets or these goals or these segments of the market, or even sometimes products or certain use cases, and they're kind of given these as targets. How can one go about like flipping the script, like in a scenario where you may not have the uh an absolute seat at the table? You may not have an executive team that's like on that same wavelength, which I know that they are at Wrike. How could somebody like move in that direction of
Yeah.
being able to have those bigger, like higher level, higher impact types of conversations that dictate not just the marketing strategy, but the org strategy?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's a struggle for a lot of organizations is to, one, make sure that marketing has a seat at the table in terms of those conversations. And then two, ensure that, marketing is really at the forefront of some of those conversations before they even happen. And if that's not the case, one is you have to build the trust, right? And you have to be able to understand what are the organizational priorities. Why are they the priorities for the company at that time, or at this particular time, and really understand it. And that to me is one piece of, look, in some cases, yeah, you just have a top-down number, or you just have, a certain strategy that has already been set, or a product roadmap that's been built for years, and this is just the way that it's headed. I think one is to truly dig into, why is that a priority? Does that make the most sense for our business at this time, and understand kind of some of the data and the reasonings behind it? And then how do we align to that strategy? And if in the event that it really isn't the right strategy, the second piece in my mind is building relationships of trust to ensure that you actually can have the appropriate conversations that allow for you to potentially be able to bring a different point of view or a different perspective of, we've evaluated the opportunity, we've taken a look at the data. And that's kind of my third point, which is data and insights. Which is, we've looked at the data, we've looked at the insights, we've maybe done a market analysis, we've monitored to see what our competitors are doing. Here's really where our sweet spot is from a differentiation standpoint. And I'd like to potentially build a business case to look at a different strategy, or can I pilot, a different market, or a different go-to-market strategy, even in this smaller space, to see if we can maybe activate more, or we could drive more revenue or conversions through this particular market. And I'd like to bring that to the table to showcase why I think we should be going this route. So it is an evolution. It's not always going to be perfect of everyone is all on the same page and marketing has a seat at the table and gets to drive a lot of those conversations. It really is about that relationship building. It really is about building the business case around, here's a potential opportunity that we should be going after. Here's how we're going to go and build, execute successfully across that strategy. And then I'm going to bring the results to the table. And then as you continue to develop that level of trust of, okay, you're bringing really good ideas, strategy, and execution to the table, and you can drive results, you start to build up that credibility to be able to have more and more, to be brought into those conversations earlier and often.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. So would you summarize that by saying like, okay, take the directives and the strategy that you're given and also kind of propose this other idea. Say like, okay, we'll do those things, but also we did some research, we did some analysis, we found these insights, and we would like to also do this other pilot thing. Here's the business case for that. Is that cool? Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, because you want to be a good partner, right? So you don't,
Yeah.
and marketing, we always have this issue in marketing of when do you say no?
Right.
Because oftentimes marketing is being asked to do everything,
All
go
types
change
of
the
stuff. Yeah.
website, go after this market, go and deliver more leads. And at some point, there is an area where you have to start to say no to certain requests because there's just not the bandwidth or the capacity or the resources to be able to do it. But also, in some cases, it's not the right approach.
Yeah.
And so, but you have to pick your battles, and you have to also make sure that you are thinking organizationally in terms of what is best for the business, not what's best for my team, what's best for me to hit my goals, or even resource constraints, because you can potentially build business cases to get past resource constraints. What you want to figure out is what's best for the business as a strategy and as organizational direction moving forward. Does this align to it? If so, and if it is like, this is the company direction and this is where we're headed, you can't just be like, no, I disagree. So
Right.
we're going to go off and do our own thing. It's sure, let's continue to support that. If you really believe strongly based off of the data and based off of the overall strategy and positioning and kind of all the things that you're bringing to the table, if you do believe that there's another way that you want to maybe experiment with, that to me is where you start to build business cases. And you should constantly be thinking about that. What's best for the company? What's the next big thing that we should be going after? Let's start to pilot and let's start to experiment with that to see if there is anything there, right? If we do have a product market fit, if we do have, a level where we can put a stake in the ground as thought leaders and as innovators in this space, and then start to get buy-in, build a business case, and then execute and see if that was successful.
I think that would work really well. And as somebody who, I speak with and interact with execs all the time. I mean, we have many clients. I think they would hate it if you were just like, no. But if you are proactive and you bring like if you're like, yes, and then you can build this business case and then you actually deliver on that and you can demonstrate that, then your trust quotient just skyrockets immediately.
Absolutely. And then of course you gain a seat at the table, right?
Absolutely.
That is where they say marketing should absolutely be part of this conversation, because they bring in new insights. They bring specific areas that will help us drive our strategy and will be accountable for the execution and the results. And it creates better alignment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's great. And I would encourage anybody listening right now, like if you are in that role, role that a lot of teams sometimes put marketers in, whether on purpose or not, where you're just basically order taking, like you just have a lot of stuff flying in different directions. I would totally recommend that advice. Like come up with a plan of your own, build a business case for it, get buy-in to at least pilot it or test it. And then if you can produce a win, you absolutely, I think, will get that seat at the table. That's great advice.
Yeah, and that's great for any stage of career, right? And
Yeah.
that is how you start to build your own personal brand as well as the credibility of, what you produce at the table, because you're constantly bringing new solutions to the table that are really thinking about driving the business forward. I mean, that should be any position. That shouldn't even be in marketing. That should literally be anyone who's early career or even later in their career, something that they're constantly looking at. That will only help you in your career pathing and success.
And that's really, I think, the hallmark of more experienced folks that are later in their career. Like they tend to come into a situation and start advising proactively and telling, the people that hire them what to do. So I always really admire like junior level people that like Steve Jobs says, like, I don't want to hire an expert and tell him what to do. I want to hire an expert that's going to tell me what to do. So I think that sometimes the whole order taking syndrome may happen because there's just not a lot being proposed otherwise,
Absolutely. And I think you do have to have the courage. And that's something that, with any risk, it takes some level of courage, but also to gain credibility. And that trust, that takes courage as well, that sometimes you might have to speak up and maybe even have a differing point of view. But again, the more that you are able to showcase kind of some of the reasons why you have a differing opinion, why you're willing to say no to something, why you want to propose a different solution. Again, it means that you're thinking, holistically about the business, that you want what's best for the business. You can do it respectfully and with partnership. But it does showcase that you're focused on overall achieving business goals as a team and as an organization. And it actually does allow for you to, have the hard conversations, but potentially pivot an organization in the way that could be, hugely profitable and hugely successful, with some of the level of thinking and constant innovation there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Let's talk about Wrike a little bit.
Sure.
I'm familiar with the product. I've used it. We have clients that use it, and I know that you had been a user of it before you arrived there. How did you end up there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was actually a Wrike customer. We utilized it in our overall marketing organization when we were back at Conga for about 4 years. Hugely saw the value. With any tech, there's always a, why are we bringing in new tech? It's kind of barriers in terms of having to kind of train your whole team on a new system and new processes. But we just saw so much value in terms of the acceleration of bringing our campaigns to market, which is something that was huge, especially for a demand gen organization. We have a lot of asks, we have big numbers to hit, we have a lot of campaigns to produce and put out the door. How can we accelerate that through all of the alignment components, the collaboration, and bringing the full marketing team together to try and make sure that we're hitting our targets? And so I was, a Wrike user and customer, and then, came on board to Wrike. And largely it was because of kind of the secret that I had mentioned, where marketing is a huge strategic driver for the business. Not only do we drive all new business acquisition, really through kind of a lot of our digital channels, driving to trials that then get sent to sales, but also so much opportunity in terms of the market. In work management, we were the pioneers in project management for the last, 15, 16 years. And we've seen such huge growth in this space, as well as huge saturation with a lot of up and coming competitors. There's a huge opportunity for us to differentiate and to showcase why, we are the most powerful platform for pretty much any use case at every single scale of company and industry. And so huge opportunity for us to really fuel the growth of the business through marketing strategy, not just in terms of leads and trials and pipeline, but actually across our corporate messaging, how we're positioned in the market, how we tackle the competitive landscape, how we really activate a go-to-market strategy across the full organization. So that was a huge reason why I joined. Love the product, great customers, and then huge opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah. And do you consider yourself more, sounds like you're inbound led mostly, but like, what are your key go-to-market pillars? Is it like inbound led, product led, event led, community led? Like, how do you sort of think about and break down your go-to-market at Wrike?
Yeah. So go-to-market for us, it is actually kind of similar to what you had said in terms of some of our core pillars are really around kind of that product-led space, really focusing on activating trials and turning them into users, customers, and then continuing to expand across that. So we really have one of those land and expand types of motions, where for project management, there's kind of a democratization of how people buy that software typically, right? You understand that there's, some project management platforms out there. You can start a trial, you check to see, does this fit my use case? Do I like this? And then you typically start with kind of, your individual use case and team, and then you start to expand. across more users, more use cases, and then for Wrike, our whole motion is really, as again, as I said, we're the most powerful project management platform for teams, departments, and companies. And that is really our sweet spot. Is we start with those teams for those individual use cases. But then, what people then start to see is they start to see the value and that accelerating time to market and improving productivity and collaboration across their team. And then we start to go into that department. Like similarly, when I was a Wrike customer, we went into the whole marketing department because every single part of marketing touches each other, and they should be fully aligned in terms of what are our goals and priorities and how do we execute for success. But then you can start to go actually enterprise wide. And at Wrike, it is actually phenomenal because all of our teams and departments roll up into organizational goals. So like I said, if you're at the top, fully aligned in terms of here's the organizational strategy, but at the individual contributor level, if you have people that are not focused on those the appropriate paths, then you start to see decreased productivity and honestly a lot of blockers to organizational success. And so actually getting a larger company and enterprise all working in one work management platform where you have visibility into what are the blockers, because there's so many departments that are working together across product or sales or marketing. And if you can really quickly be able to see, oh, there's a huge resource constraint, or, oh, we're not aligned in terms of larger goals, what does that look like? And it allows for you to move much faster as an organization.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine the land and expand potential. Because like in larger orgs, like we have super large clients like Amazon as an example. They all work in different teams. And then even within a single team, there's a bunch of different departments. So do you guys have a lot of like those enterprise level accounts, which are small, like it's just one little team billing, but it's a huge name and just like evergreen sort of room for expansion inside of that account?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually where the majority of our revenue is coming from as an organization, is because there's so much white space within an account and you start to see so much adoption and value within teams and departments that as you start to then, go cross departmentally, especially as those workflows and those work streams start to touch other departments, that's huge amounts of white space and opportunity for us. So actually this year, right, and what we're seeing in terms of a larger trend, and I'm sure because you talk with marketers every single day and organizations of all sizes, we're going into this year and there's a lot of headwinds in 2023 where there's, do more with less. We're going to cut back in terms of spend and cut back in terms of resources and teams and all of those things. We are seeing a huge trend, one, in terms of that consolidation of tech, which is, why are we using 5 different project management platforms in all these different teams? Let's actually consolidate into one, because that makes more sense, obviously, economically as a company, but also it gets us that visibility that you wouldn't have gotten when you have multiple platforms. But also there's a huge trend to focus more on customer expansion for marketers and for businesses, because the cost of acquisition is so high. And so as you start to look into your install base, what does that actually look like in terms of the ability to be able to create more space for upsell and cross-sell, where you already have advocates, you already have champions. So that's a huge driver for us as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my goodness. I love the land and expand, because I mean, it's like, anytime we're speaking with a client, that'll be my first question. Usually it's like, is land and expand an opportunity? Because, it's just way less friction. You can literally say, hey, 2 other Thermo Fisher teams use Wrike and they're loving it. Like, do you want to use it? And it's just such an easier in. So I love that. That's awesome. So you've been at Wrike now for over a year, I know. What are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I think there are probably challenges that every single marketer is facing right now, which is, how do you continue to drive and fuel growth for an organization while also really thinking hard about efficiencies, really looking very, very closely at every single dollar that you're spending and ensuring that it is the right place and getting maximum value out of it
Yeah.
and maximum ROI. It's nothing new for marketers at all. That's something that, the best marketers are constantly looking at. I would say that there's just even more focus for us to do even, to get maximum value, even more so out of each of those dollars that are being spent than even before. And
Yeah.
so for us, we're looking at, obviously all of our acquisition strategies and making sure that not only are we driving quality and quantity, at an efficient rate, but really focusing on our target markets where for us, it's about expected lifetime value. Because we don't want to just, because you can definitely get, a dollar, you can spend $1 and get $1 back or $2 back or whatnot in terms of that cost of acquisition. But for us, there are certain, what we would call like ideal customer profiles. There's certain buying centers and types of companies where we know based off of the profile, we could see, a 5 or a 10x, incremental expansion and net retention off of them just from that land and expand type of mentality versus some other types of markets. And so we're really focusing on what are those target audiences and how do we make sure that we're focusing our money there, where even if it's not immediate, high ROI in year 1 or in 6 months, but actually if we understanding the net retention value in 3 years, right? Or even beyond that, we know that we're going to have so much white space, to expand, and we'll have that net retention further on. So that's kind of one piece in terms of the acquisition. And then in terms of expansion, like I mentioned, we have so much white space in a lot of our mid-market and enterprise types of businesses where, we have a team or department that really sees the value of Wrike and really starting to build out more of the awareness across that larger organization, as well as, find those collaborative workflows that connect those departments to try and get better visibility for that organization. So those are some of the challenges and opportunities I would say that we're really going after this year.
Yeah. And I noticed you guys do an amazing job really telling customer stories and doing so in such a way that highlights them as the hero of the story. It's all about like how customer did XYZ, not like how Wrike helped customer do PDQ, which I think is awesome. I really admire that and think it's powerful. Do you have any other do you have any successful account expansion motions that you can talk about? Like, what's really working for you there?
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the customer hero stories, because for us, we have a fantastic customer base, customers that love Wrike, and I hear it all the time, which I always love to hear. And what we love to focus on, and it's because we hear it often, is, we've helped those customers define their careers at their companies. We've seen career progression for them as they gain visibility, as they, start to get a seat at the table because they are able to implement and showcase strategies and improvements on productivity and efficiency, and actually get them up leveled and highly visible within their organization. So that's one reason why we love to spotlight our customers. And, again, because we love to hear their stories as well. In terms of expansion, for us, there's a number of ways that we go about it. One is just through larger segmentation, because you have, different customers that have different needs and that have different opportunities in terms of, the level of customization, the level of support that's necessary. And so, we've been talking a lot about kind of almost a leveling of education and awareness as we look to support them, as we look to train them and onboard them, as we look to continue to showcase, new ideas, best practices, ways to utilize our solution, both within their team and then outside the organization. And, I think of it as kind of a 101, 201, 301, 401, which is, where are you essentially in kind of your maturity or your sophistication of how you're managing your work. And so if you think about, you're just typical, marketing manager, project manager, or literally anyone who's managing a team or projects, which is almost everyone who works, there's different levels of complexity where you might start with just spreadsheets or emails or things like that. Obviously, when you're on Wrike, you're at a different level where you can start to build out better, task management essentially within projects. But then there's a level even beyond that as you start to even get more sophisticated and start to associate your workflow with someone else's. And, again, across teams and departments, where there's just levels of complexity where you want to do better roll-ups so that you can have reporting and dashboards so you can actually see across a full organization, where are those bottlenecks? Where do we not have enough resources? Where are there delays in terms of some of those projects? And so, for us, it is about how do we segment and how do we determine, kind of where is a customer at in terms of their level of sophistication of utilizing the product, but also understanding how to better manage their work, along with the level of customization of everyone has a little bit of a different work style or a different workflow for their organization. So how do we customize it for them? So I think a lot of it does revolve around that level of segmentation and then ensuring that you're producing the right content and knowledge and enablement to be able to help them get to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what channels do you primarily reach them with? Is it mostly like email based that you're using on the expansion side, or is it a lot of LinkedIn, or are there like BDRs or SDRs that are focused on those accounts specifically?
Yeah, so we do have, there's a couple of things just in terms of communities, our product, and then obviously marketing, right? So there's one is kind of sales based, the account managers that are servicing, or the CS team that is, servicing those each of those accounts. There are communities, large active communities, obviously, where they could have peer sharing and knowledge sharing and get tips and tricks, as well as more resources. There is the level within the product, which is how do we utilize the product to fuel some of that product-led growth in terms of, hey, looks like you're struggling with this, or hey, did you know that there's actually, you can automate that workflow, as well as there might be some different features or functions that you haven't yet been able to tap into. And then there's the marketing component, which, again, as a strategic driver of an organization should help to allow for us to tie all of those things together based off of the customer journey through a lot of email, but also, are there levels of advertising channels or paid social channels or things like that we could also utilize. Mm-hmm. Then there's, the level of, as we start to really think through expansion strategy, what I would call kind of a pod mentality of kind of field marketers in conjunction with our field sales teams, in conjunction with our SDR teams, to really focus on target accounts, determining, what's kind of the next best product for them in a sense, like next use case, next team or department, next level, maybe it's an upgrade. What's the next best opportunity for them, the revenue potential, and then how do they work together to ensure that we have, a good aligned motion, multi-channel across, sales and product and marketing to ensure that we can showcase, if it's maybe another use case, or if we're trying to maybe get into a new team, what does that motion look like, and how do we have the right content, the right incentives, the right strategy to get in front of those customers in an aligned way.
That sounds very personalized and sophisticated. That I bet works really well.
As with all marketing, it's all kind of continued optimizations and a lot of testing and a lot of experimentation. So, I think it sounds complex, but in a lot of cases, it's more about alignment and making sure that we have plays that are fully aligned within kind of that pod mentality, and that we can execute, and then make sure that we're constantly testing to see what works, what doesn't, and then iterating and improving.
That's awesome. Well, Esther, time is flying by. I could talk to you about marketing for days on end, probably. But I want to switch gears. I want to talk about your personal story a little bit because you have a really inspiring story, I think, for up and coming leaders, for women, for anybody really that's faced with adversity and needs a little bit of, a little boost of inspiration to kind of overcome that. Could you tell us a little bit about your story and kind of your ascent to the C-suite?
Sure. I'm like, how much time do we have? I'll do kind of the short route. So in terms of kind of my career journey, and then, happy to kind of talk through some of the personal aspects as well. My career journey is I started out kind of generalist within marketing. So I did a little bit of nonprofit, went into kind of agency, and then moved into B2B tech. And really just started out marketing manager company. I think I was employee number 50 or something. So pretty small, which means I wore a lot of hats, but it actually was fantastic because I was able to, as the company grew, start to build foundational programs kind of within each function within marketing as the company grew. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned, kind of the secret, which was really identifying like what were some gaps, what were some big opportunities that I didn't see really, focused on in a growing organization. And so, moved into customer marketing because we had never had customer marketing before, really started to build out retention programs, but really focus on life cycle. So how do we do onboarding better? How do we focus on kind of, moving them into the next stage, getting into advocates, getting into retention. And I utilized at that point, I was really the only one utilizing kind of our email program. And it was when, and I'm dating myself, it was when marketing automation first started to come on the scene, and we weren't utilizing it appropriately. So again, that's when I built a business case to say, there's so much more opportunity that we could be utilizing marketing automation for than just sending out emails every once in a while. Mm-hmm. So I built out a whole roadmap that actually went to the CEO. And then I basically we created a role, which was marketing operations. So I started to build out all of the marketing measurement, campaign measurement, tracking, routing, nurturing, all of those components, which then moved me into kind of demand gen, and started to build out really kind of the acquisition programs and ensuring that we had lead scoring, routing, all of those components to make sure that we could fuel pipeline growth predictably. Yeah. Then I took on I actually went back to customer because the fire of the day was for the organization was, and oftentimes what you see with high growth companies is you're product led, everyone's focused on building a great product, then it's all sales, right? It's all about acquisition. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we forgot about our customers and they're churning. And so churn was a big component. And so I actually moved into a customer role to really focus on, let's do some risk analysis. Let's look at segmenting our customer base, figuring out how do we retain them. And even before they start to be a churn risk, how do we make sure that we have a good customer experience? And then I oversaw kind of all of the entire buyer journey and customer life cycle. Then I moved into more of a demand generation role, building out again demand gen at a smaller company, and that's kind of been my career path as you think about, again, bringing solutions to the table, figuring out ways to scale and build out foundational programs to fuel that growth, while bringing solutions to the table in innovative ways to think about it. Alongside some of that my career pathing journey, I got married, started having kids. And, for me, I wanted to maintain career trajectory and upward momentum, but also not at the expense of my personal life and what was a priority for me. And so was able to really maintain a lot of that by basically, with my first child, I was able to kind of take my maternity leave. And then when I came back, I did 2 days in the office, 2 days at home, and 1 day off, which was fantastic. I did that for the first year, which really allowed for me to have kind of both, both the career pathing and making sure that I'm maintaining and producing from a career standpoint, but also the time I needed with my family. And I always say this, especially when I'm mentoring people who are and women who are earlier stage, which is, figure out what's important for you in this stage of life, because it's not always going to be here, right? And you have to really kind of decide for yourself what's most important. And then make sure that you're holding firm on what's important to you at that time, because it's not going to be forever. And I knew that, I could come back and be able to make sure I'm focusing on, family when I needed to, or career when I needed to, or both at the same time. And thankfully, I've had companies that are hugely supportive of that. Plus, again, with the credibility that I was able to showcase in terms of my ability to be able to produce results, as well as to impact strategy, that all is super helpful. And then actually, when I was at Conga, I had just started, kind of in another demand gen role. And I think 4 months in, discovered that I had cancer. And it was crazy. Like, you never think that that's going to happen to you, especially at a young age. But, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was kind of the most kind of aggressive form in terms of that type of breast cancer. But I, again, kind of decided, look, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm not going to be defined as like a cancer patient or anything like that. And so I chose, and again, everyone has to decide for themselves kind of what makes the most sense for you. I decided to continue to work kind of throughout all of the treatments. And that actually really helped me, because it fueled me, because I knew that if I was just like at home in my pajamas feeling horrible, like it would just compound. But if I could distract myself and focus myself on something else, it wouldn't be as bad. And so it was actually kind of crazy, because it was like our busiest time of year. I literally went into my first chemo treatment, and 2 weeks later, I flew to London to produce one of our biggest user conferences for the year in London. I came back and did another treatment, and then I flew to Las Vegas to do an even bigger user event, like 3 weeks later after that second treatment. And then after, I think, my fourth treatment, I did Dreamforce, and we always did like a multi-million-dollar scale, huge production at Dreamforce. And then even radiation was right after that. And that's every single day. And I'd be taking work calls, on the way to the hospital and then on the way back.
Oh my
and
God.
my very last radiation treatment, actually the second to last, I remember I went to the hospital at 7 a.m. for a radiation treatment, then went straight to the airport, flew to San Francisco for a work meeting, came back that night. And then the next day had my final radiation treatment. So,
Wow.
like I said, it's not that I recommend that for everyone. It worked for me, and I had huge support from my family and from my husband, and, and from my company around all that. And it worked for me. It went well. But a year later had, kind of an emergency surgery, didn't go very well, kind of all of these things. And so actually, I had a chat with my husband at that time, and we were like, maybe it's time for me to take a break.
Yeah.
I think my body's telling me, like, you've been going, like, I traveled so much that first year of treatments and surgeries and all of that stuff. And so, decided to kind of take a step back, took a sabbatical. My company was hugely supportive. Because sometimes, again, you have to make the decisions that are right for you at that time. So I took a sabbatical about 6 or 7 months, which was fantastic, and really focused on my health and really focused on my family, and then came back to an even bigger role, actually, at the company. So again, all that to say, it worked for me. I don't necessarily recommend it for everyone, but, for me, it's about really determining what's most important to you in this phase of life right now, understanding it's not forever, and then making sure that you create space for that.
Wow. That is an amazing story. And I mean, like, just like I couldn't imagine juggling all those things, like up and coming career, big demands, young kids, two young kids, and then a cancer diagnosis on top. Like I would be curled up in a ball, just sucking my thumb all day, probably. So
I learned mentality is everything, and not everything, but it's a lot, right? And it is how you choose to tackle, what's in front of you. And again, it's not forever, but mindset is a lot, and mindset can get you through a lot. So I would say mindset, and then the second is making sure that you have kind of people that can support you, because you can't do it alone. And again, I have a phenomenal family, and I had phenomenal team and company with huge support. So I think those are big things that I, for me at least, were huge takeaways.
yeah, and you seem to be really good at recruiting mentors too, like either formal or informal. How do you do that? How do you get mentorship from others?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, because I don't know that I've actually even had like formal mentors where I've said, I'd like you to mentor me, let's meet. But I've actually implemented those mentorship types of programs at every more recent company that I've been in, because I do think that it's hugely important. But informal, I think, is huge as well, where, making sure that you're constantly connecting with people who just have different perspectives than you, and they can be at every level. They can be, even more junior to you or more senior in different industries or different functions. It's all about, constant growth and getting different perspectives. So, for me, I've been able to build out some mentorship programs just because I think it's hugely important. Even if it's not, you're meeting every month or whatnot, but even just to get more human connection when we're in such kind of a hybrid and remote environment, oftentimes, and to hear from people who just have, different life experience than you or different career experience than you, I think it's always helpful. So it's always something that I recommend.
That's amazing. Esther, you have an awesome story. I'm very, very impressed by you. I think that, and I'm happy for you, and cancer-free now. I know I read.
Yes.
We didn't mention it, but congratulations on that. Congratulations
Thanks.
on being CMO at an awesome company, like great product, great people, great investors. We know Vista pretty well. So I'm so happy for you. That's awesome. And I know you have 100 things to do, so let's get you out of here for today. If you are liking this, if you were inspired by today, please drop us a like or a comment, share it with your friend. We'd appreciate it. Esther, if people want to hear more about your story or learn more about Wrike, where would you point them?
Yeah. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn personally. And then obviously, if you're interested in Wrike, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn and ask me about it. Or you can go to wrike.com.
Awesome. I will definitely check it out. We're actually shopping, so we're Asana heavy right now.
Boo.
But I am definitely going to add Wrike to the short list of platforms to look at.
You should. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Esther. We will be in touch very soon. I hope we can have you back sometime.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for letting me share my story.
Absolutely. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at performancemarketinginsiders.com. This podcast is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the performance agency that makes you smarter, offering AI-driven search, paid social, analytics, and conversion rate optimization for financial services, health, B2B, and SaaS brands that know. Hey guys, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, you can get a performance marketing assessment for free. And this isn't some cookie cutter automated report. It lays out detailed, specific things you can do right now to unlock limitless growth and nirvana level personal satisfaction. To claim your free assessment, just go to performancemarketinginsiders.com/audit and you'll have your customer report within just a few days.